Hey everyone, my name is Emily and I am the Crossroads Anywhere student pastor. What does that mean? That means if you're watching this right now and you don't live near one of our physical Crossroads buildings, I'm your girl. I would love to walk alongside you in your faith journey. I would love to pray for you, answer any questions you may have, and help you build a community of friends on the ground no matter where you live. You're about to watch week 1 of our series called Be For Real, and let me be so for real, you're gonna wanna pay attention to what God might have for you. Check it out.
Today we're starting a series and it's called Be For Real, Be So For Real. What does that even mean though, right? Like what does it mean to be for real? Well, we're going to unpack that because before we can talk about even being real, we got to talk about showing up. At Crossroads, sometimes we say you belong before you believe. And that's just an interesting statement that it does look nice on t-shirts. So that's one of the reasons we say it. It looks really nice if we were to print it out and say it. It's like a cool statement. But we don't just say it because it looks nice on t-shirts and it's a cool statement. We say it because it's something that we saw Jesus model. We saw him inviting people, hanging out with people, wanting them to be around him even before they decided that they wanted him in their lives. We see Jesus coming down to people. This is something that he did, and he didn't just let them stay there, though. See, Jesus would meet people where they were, and then he would level up. He wouldn't just meet them and go, I like that. He would always call us to something better than we could imagine. And this has been true for me. I've been walking with Jesus for a while now, but it's always been true that he would meet me where I am and then he would level up. So growing up, true story, I was a really good liar. I still am. I'm just a fantastic liar. Rolls off my tongue. I don't get any nervous sweats. Someone's there with me. I'm not boasting about that, except for one time I told this lie that I was considering a little white lie. But I used to tell sort of colored lies, like white lies and gray lies and purple lies and red lies. I was just really good at lying. But I told this white lie that sort of followed me for the next 10 years. Now, in high school, some kind of way, my middle name got out. Is anybody like me and you like, I don't really want people knowing my middle name. That's like that's my government name. You're not just supposed to know that in these streets. That's crazy. So some kind of way, people started calling me by my middle name, and I was shook. So I said, I'm going to fix that. And when Facebook was hot, I changed my name on Facebook to Hannah Nicole. And so everybody thought my name was Hannah Nicole because, one, that rolls off the tongue is a fantastic name. And so up until at the time, I had a friend named Brandon, and Brandon is still my friend to this day. And I've been out of high school for a minute. And Brandon, I'm not kidding, until 3 years ago, thought my middle name was Nicole. Like, that's how good of a liar. We just never revisited that it wasn't. I was a really, really good liar. And the issue with that is the reason Brandon believed me was not because I was just a good liar, but because he believed I was a woman of integrity. He believed that I was the same person at home as that I was at school. He believed that the things that came out of my mouth that I said I believed, I actually did. See, it was easy for Brandon to think I was telling the truth because Brandon thought that I was someone who was real. Well, it turns out that unfortunately in that situation, Brandon was wrong. And I was actually not telling the truth. And I can't tell you the truth today. You also will not find out my middle name today. I got to keep that close to the vest. But we're going to look at a guy in the Bible who decided the same thing. See, my actions didn't always follow my words because even when I was lying like that all the time, I said I was following Jesus. But that part of my life was just not surrendered to him. It wasn't a part of my life that I said he could have. And so I wasn't following him for real. And there's a guy in the Bible that had to come to terms with the same thing. And this is the story of Zacchaeus. Now, I'm about to walk us through some scripture. We don't always read a long scripture in this for lots of different reasons. One, we don't always have a lot of time. But I have to read this today. So I want you to do me a favor. Look at your neighbor and say, lock in. All right, now lock in. I'm about to give you the context. Lock in, neighbor. Here we go. Luke 19:1. It says, then Jesus entered. Are we locked in? We're locked in. We're getting to it. Okay, some folks brought their Bibles. Dang, Luke 19. That's where we're going. Verse 1. It says, Jesus entered and passed through Jericho, which is just a city in Israel. It says, now, behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but he could not because there was a large crowd, and he was short. So he ran ahead. He climbs up a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste, which means he hurried up. And he came down and he received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they is like religious people, they all complained, saying, he's going to go be the guest of a man who is a sinner? Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor. And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I will restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, Jesus, has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Now, Zacchaeus is a super relatable guy. And he's relatable because he's an outcast, kind of in more ways than one. Like, my man is a sinner, right? We can all identify with that. If you're new here, that just means we at one point separated from God. That's all it means. Or you do stuff that would separate you from God. I've done stuff that would separate me from God. We're going to talk about that. And he's a sinner, but he also is an outcast because he looks weird. And people probably make fun of him for looking weird. He's like made fun of for his physical appearance. Like, that's a real thing. And he probably has a really short nickname, a nickname that makes fun of him being a wee little man. It was not a short king, unfortunately. He was not. He was a dude that had a job that got him ridiculed. How many of y'all have a job? Sweet. You guys are rocking and rolling. I didn't have a job at your age. But if you don't have a job, that's okay. When you get a job, there's going to be this thing called a pay stub. And at the end of the pay stub, it's going to have a little tax thing. That means somebody's going to take your money that you worked for and give it to the government. It has to happen. And this is what Zacchaeus did for a living. He collected the taxes for a place that people was not interested in collecting it. He collected it for Rome. And the locals hated him for it. And they hated him not just because he was taking their money, but because tax collectors were known to basically be gangsters. They would take a little skim off the top for their own pockets. That's how he was rich. He was rich because he was stealing. And so he's not well liked. You might read that story and go, why couldn't he just ask somebody to stand in front of them? Well, he has no friends. He couldn't have asked anyone to stand with him to see Jesus. But he wants to see Jesus because Jesus is popular. And guess what? Richness and popular, I'm rich. It seems like I should know the popular guy. But something happens radically when he meets Jesus and changes his life. See, in the story of Zacchaeus, we see him go from being a fan of Jesus to being a fluke that's fake. And then finally, he goes to being a follower. And a lot of us are in one of three of those buckets. We're either a fan, we like him, we want to hang out with him, we want his autograph, we want the perks that come with him. We're a fluke, we're pretending to like him, or we used to like him, and we don't know how to get back to liking him. Or some of us are ready to take that step to be a true follower. Zacchaeus had to climb that tree because my man didn't have anybody that was willing to see Jesus with him. He didn't have a single person that was like, I want to come to your house. So imagine Jesus, when he walks up to him, he knows him. He calls him out by name and he says, listen, I'm coming to your house. And Zacchaeus, who looks like he's having a really great life on the surface, his life starts to get wrecked. See, Jesus, of course, wants to go to his house. And of course, Zacchaeus says, yes, I want to hang out with you. And of course, he wants to hang out with him because Jesus brings peace and joy and life, and he's awesome. And we shouldn't be shocked that Jesus receives him because in John, he promises it to. In John 6, it says, all that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. Zacchaeus was a fan of Jesus, and Jesus has no problem with fans. So if you're here tonight, you're like, I kind of like what he stands for. That's great. You're in the right place. If you're here and you're like, I like that people who like him are nice, that's great. You're probably in that fan bucket. And Zacchaeus was a fan of Jesus, and he could have stayed there. But see, Jesus wanted more for him, and he wants more for all of us. And next in the story, we see that Zacchaeus receives Jesus joyfully. That's exciting. Because one day, when I first accepted Jesus, I received him joyfully too. It was exciting. I wanted that new life that the pastor was promising. I wanted that hope that everybody was talking about. I wanted that peace that surpassed all understanding. I wanted that mental stability. I wanted less anxiety. I wanted all that. I was receiving that joyfully. But there comes a time where we have to decide, are we going to lay down the things that we walking into the relationship with God with? Are we going to lay down our stuff? And are we going to pick up Jesus' stuff? The risk of not following Jesus with integrity, which means not following Jesus for real. Zacchaeus had this. He could have been a fluke. He could have just invited Jesus to his house and dined with him and been like, yo, it's fun to hang out with you, and never changed anything about his life. That's easy to do. That's something that I've done. That's a place that I've been, unfortunately, for a while. There's this little moment in the story where the writer talks about how the righteous people were really mad that Jesus invited Zacchaeus to his house. And he could have left that out, but he didn't. I think he keeps it in for two reasons. One, because he wants us to see that Jesus doesn't actually care. He loves you right now. You don't need to get yourself together. Just like he calls Zacchaeus, he calls us. He meets us where we are. And two, I think it's to show us that the love of Jesus, the presence of Jesus, is what radically changed Zacchaeus from being what was considered a sinner to a man that was willing to give up everything for him. See, that is going from fluke to follower. And it's not because Zacchaeus has some amazing moral character. That was a quick moment. This story is fast, but it's not overnight. See, Jesus' love changes us from the inside out. And he made Zacchaeus a man who could follow him with integrity, who could follow him for real. When I was in like 8th grade, which was forever ago, when I was in 8th grade, I got my heart broke for the first time. I know. And I said, that's never, ever going to happen to me again. Like ever. Don't snap, because here's what I did to make sure that that was true. The rest of the trajectory of like my dating period, I'm not kidding, like well into my 20s, well into my now, before I got married, I would hurt a guy before he could hurt me, like intentionally. So some of you are saying yes, but the issue with that is that I was professing to follow Jesus. See, the problem with that is I had a line in the sand that said, yeah, I'm cool to hang out with Jesus. I'm fine to be a fan of his, but I'm not going to lay this part of my life down. I'm not going to treat his people right. I'm not going to imitate him, because guess what Jesus would never do? Hurt people intentionally. Guess what he would never do? He would never go, you know what? I see you and I'm going to harm you just so I can protect myself. Now, see, that was a long time ago that I was doing that. A long time ago, I would have called myself a liar. But since knowing Jesus, those are some things that I've laid down. But I don't want to just preach to you about stuff that happened a long time ago. I'm going to preach to you about something that happened last week. Just last week, I had the opportunity to be generous, which is a character trait of Jesus. And I say I'm following Jesus, and I get up on this stage, and I say I'm following Jesus, and I have the opportunity, if I'm not careful, I can be exactly like Zacchaeus could have been. I could invite Jesus to dine with me. I could take all the perks that come with him. I could do all the things that he gives me, but never actually give him my life. Just last week, I had the opportunity to be generous. Simple. We see Jesus be generous all over the Bible. If I'm truly following him, I want to follow what he's doing. And you know what I chose? I chose me. I chose myself. Intentionally. It was not an accident. It was not, I had an actual thought that said me over this person. Now here's the danger in that. The danger in that is I say I'm following Jesus. That doesn't mean I'm not going to mess up, but if I'm not careful, I can easily live a life that's projecting like I'm following him. He's at my house. I love him. Oh, I love Jesus when it's convenient for me. But when it matters, when nobody's looking except him, am I truly following him? See, to be a follower of Jesus, it means that we imitate him. And how do we imitate him? It means we read his word, we find out what he's like. And then we try to do what he did, not in our own power, but in his power. So thankfully, He doesn't just leave me and meet me where I am. He doesn't just say, Hannah, you're a selfish person. You're out of the game. Get away from me, because I don't like that stuff. Instead, he meets me where I am, and he challenges me to go deeper. And so just like Zacchaeus and just like you, I get the opportunity to come back to Jesus and say, just like he said, hey, here's everything I have. I'm really sorry I did that. I actually don't want to choose selfishness anymore. I want to go a different way. I don't want to just choose you, Jesus, when it is cool and gets me a stage. I don't want to choose you when it's fun on Thursday night or Sunday morning or Saturday when it's a cool youth night and I get to flex to my friends and how popular I am. I don't want to just choose you when it matters. I want to choose you in the silence. I want to choose you in the closet. I want to choose you at home. Now, here's the reality. You're like, why do you have shredded paper up here, Hannah? Here's why. Because Zacchaeus could not change himself. I could not change myself. I don't have a good bone in my body. I just proved it. Just last week, I was unlike God. See, it is the presence of Jesus. It is the love of Jesus that changed Zacchaeus. See, he got in the presence of Jesus and said, I want that forever. So let me confess this stuff. Let me tell you what's going on so I can have that forever. Here's what he did. He put it all out on the table. His secret sin. He put it all out on the table. The stuff that was separating him from the true peace of knowing God. The true hope of knowing God. And maybe you're like, Hannah, I am a follower of Jesus. Guess what? You and all of TikTok, because it's convenient. Following ain't got nothing to do with what you say with your mouth, everything to do with what you do. So here's what I was doing, right? Thankfully, been delivered from this. I was a liar. And that I took to Jesus, and he was so kind. And the thing that was separating me, is this plugged up? Should be. There it is. The thing that was separating me from him, I said, I'm not going to have that anymore. I'm done with that. I'm getting rid of that. That was easy. And then I said, you know what? I'm selfish, but God, I can bring that to you. I can lay that down. I give that to you. That's separating me from you, and I don't want that anymore. I give it back to you, just like Zacchaeus did, because I want your presence. That was easy to do. Now you're wondering, Hannah, how do I do what you're saying? How do I become a follower? How do I follow Jesus for real and stop faking it? Because guess what, y'all? Faking it is getting us nowhere. Either you're in or you're out. Either you are all in or you are all out. And not because he doesn't love you. He loves you. It's your choice. It's your choice. But the in, it leads to life. It leads to true peace, true freedom. It leads to true mental stability. It leads to true community. It leads to being known. And I have to choose every day to follow Jesus. This is not a magic trick. Just because I write this down, pride, on a sheet of paper and shred it, that doesn't mean it gets rid of my life. It means I choose him every day. And I'm going to have to do the same thing tomorrow because I struggle with pride every day. So just like today, I laid it down. I got to lay it back down tomorrow.
Thanks for watching. We all have something that's holding us back and making us feel stuck. Whatever that thing is for you, I challenge you to write it down, tell a friend, or text it to us using the number below. I would love to pray for you to walk in freedom of that thing holding you back. Remember that you can follow us on Instagram and check out our other messages on YouTube. See you next time.